Hey everybody, it's Josh. Just want to put a little trigger warning in the beginning of this episode. I end up talking about a lot of personal things in my life and touch on some triggering topics for some people, such as depression. Just wanted to give you a little heads up before the start of the episode. If that's not for you, please exit now. And if not, enjoy the episode and thank you for listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to You've Been Josh with Josh. I am your host, Josh. Yes. Episode 27. 27-year-old podcast, almost in our 30s. Isn't that crazy? We're getting old. Holy shit. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope that everyone's week has gone splendidly. It's good to be back on the podcast, doing a little personalized episode. I like how we do this, split it up with a week with having a guest and then a week with just myself and going back and forth. I like that. Things have been nutty. I feel like I say this and I feel like, we're changing so much every single week, but like in a week's time, so much changes and so much stuff goes on that, like, I don't know. I just feel like every single week there's something new, and that's the joy of life, The problem that I have now is that we've had 27 episodes, including this one, and so I'm starting to forget what I've talked about on the podcast. I'm starting to forget what I've talked about on the podcast, what I've already talked about, what I want to talk about, and then I like I said, I make a little pancake list of like a little short stack of all the little things that have happened throughout this week, but problem with this is I made my episode with Brahm 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then the one with one by myself that week as well, so I could do that one, then come out with Brahms this past week, and now it's been 3 weeks and I'm finally recording a podcast again. So it's been a little bit since I've actually recorded the podcast, and over the last 2 weeks a lot has happened, and I've also forgot to write stuff down because I've been just so busy. There's been a lot going on. I was actually on a podcast. Huge shout out to Bren Gra, his channel Connections. He has a podcast called Connections. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for another podcast as well. He brings on fellow streamers, and talks to them about just life and stuff. Not really pertaining to stream stuff, which is really cool. And I was on his podcast like a week or so ago. I have no relevance to time, and that was really awesome. I had a great time. We talked about some really heavy topics, which was good. I thought it was a really good conversation that we had. But with that, we also did a bunch of games, met a lot of new people. We're doing the morning streams now. Joy and I have been doing a lot of stuff off stream. It's just been a little hectic as of late as I'm shifting some things. And so I just honestly forgot to write things down. I honestly forgot to write stuff down for this week. So I was sitting here and I was like, what am I going to talk about this coming podcast? I was like, what am I going to talk about? And then I was like, you know what? We talked about a lot on the Connections podcast about a lot of things, and a lot of things that were brought up that were all more on the serious note and more serious side of thing that I thought would be good to talk about today, and just discuss, because this podcast, when I made it, it was more of like, oh, I can talk with people. I can also like just do little jokes and, do little jokeronis, and it has stayed true to that in my opinion. But I also talk about some more serious stuff, and I feel like this is like maybe pulling back the screen a little bit from the Ben Josh persona, and getting more of a deeper dive into my life, and also like my past, and get to know me a little bit better, if that makes sense. But also, like I've said multiple times, this is kind of like my own personal journal. So I wanted to talk today about just my childhood growing up, and also my sister, because that's something I don't really talk about that often. And I do think it's important not only for me just to sit and discuss it for myself. Because something I learned, at least, was just, we're learning every new things all the time. But on the Connections podcast with Bren, was sometimes you just need to talk about it. Sometimes you just need to vent about it to fully accept it, because some things will never heal, some things will never change, and that's okay, so today's going to be a little bit of a more serious episode. It also might touch on some topics that might be a little unsavory for people, so I just prep it with caution, if that's the way it is. But again, I'm going to be talking about things that are very personal to me. So I'd appreciate if anybody's listening from the stream and all that, we don't talk about it on stream. This is just a thing for the podcast. If you want to talk to me privately about it, or reach out to me, you're more than welcome to over the Discord or via email or DMs or whatnot, and talk to me about this. But I'd rather it just be a thing for the podcast, and just a little mark off on the journal. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to make this as entertaining as possible too, because I'm going to try to keep it upbeat, even though it's going to be some heavy topics for myself. But yeah, so what we talked about on the podcast with Bren was just like how my childhood pertained to the way I grew up, and just like my background to my personality. And we've talked about that on this podcast a lot, actually. And I think that everything that we do can be called back to our childhood. Our childhood molds us, it turns us into who we are going to be. And a lot of things along the way and events will change that and start to make shape into something. Life is like pottery, This is my metaphor for today. Life is like pottery, all right? We're constantly being formed. We start as a lump of dough. That's just us as a baby. Babies are ugly. There's some cute babies, but start off, we're just a lump of fucking clay, okay? We're just flesh and bone, and our brain is growing. And as we grow, we get shaped into different things. We get molded. We go with the grain. We get smoothed out. And some things will come along that will change us, and then will give us some pattern and some shape. Maybe we'll get a long neck, or we got a fat bottom, and that just makes us into who we're supposed to be. And we're constantly changing. It's pottery that will never have to meet the kiln, if that makes sense, because we're constantly learning, we're constantly growing, this kind of thing. So maybe pottery is not the best term, but you know what? I went with it. We're gonna stick with it, because we're gonna stick with it. We're pottery, okay? I'm a lump of clay that's been molded. But my parents, we grew up pretty poor, just because we were a little lower class, my dad went to college, and my mom went to college to become a teacher, and they met in college, and my dad realized that he wanted to do seminary, become a pastor, study theology. So we moved to Gettysburg, which is the place I've talked about how many times. And he started school there. And at the time I was homeschooled. My mom taught me and my sister, and because of going to school back to back, plus my mom going to school, they had a lot of student loans. It's college is expensive. And so I remember early on, I think I've talked about this before, going to like the food pantry and getting food and stuff like that. And my dad went to the seminary, and we were there for a long time. My mom was working constantly, and my sister, who's older than me, she's like 2.5 years older than me. She was a very like introverted person, so she would stick to her room. She would play her music. She loved music, and she stayed to herself basically. Whereas even though I was shy, I liked being around people. So I I know I was a bother. I know for a fact I was a bother because I was constantly like, "Hey, Sarah, what are you doing?" Like, hey, sis, what's going on?" Hey, Dad, hey, Mom, what you doing? Get the fuck out of my room, just constantly that. And I know I was a pain in the ass, but I was just bored, and I wanted attention, and I wanted to hang out with someone because I was at home a lot. Um, but there was I wouldn't say it was, I wouldn't say it was like there wasn't a distinct or verbal desire for me to follow in my dad's footsteps of becoming a pastor. Like that wasn't something that they said to me. It wasn't like pressed. I didn't feel like I needed they didn't make me feel like I needed to. But growing up, like my dad's dad is a bishop. And then my dad became a pastor, and so like I grew up in the church, and so like me personally, I was like, man, I feel like I need to do that, and like a lot of family friends and also my friends were like, are you going to become a pastor? Because your dad and your grandfather are. It was just like that kind of like itch in the back of my mind of like I kind of felt like I needed to, and so whenever I wanted to do something that was out of that demographic, it just felt like I was doing something wrong. And that's personal on me. That wasn't on my parents. That wasn't anything they did. That was just like me. You're growing up. You hormones are rushing through my body, and I'm just having all kinds of emotions, including doubts and confusion and stuff. Um, Whereas my sister, she wanted to she wanted to do music, and she wanted to write Christian music, and she considered doing an album, and she ended up making an album and wrote a whole album of Christian music, and it was really good. And she wanted to move to California to be with to focus on music and stuff like that. And I don't want to go into too much detail of like uh, everything that transpired, but basically, um, long story short, uh, she realized while she was out there, this is my assumption because we don't contact each other anymore, and that was also my choice, as well as hers, um, that she didn't want to be a part of the church anymore, and like it wasn't for her, and that's fair. Me personally, I'm not religious anymore. I have no ill will towards um, religion at all. I just me myself know I'm not religious anymore. And my parents know that. They're fine with it. I'm sure they're not like completely fine with it, obviously, but they respect it. That's the best word for it. They respect it, and they know that I have a mutual respect for them in the fact that they still are themselves. Um, and I think that's an important thing to have. And I'm really happy that me and my family can be open about that and not have to worry about being passive aggressive, if that makes sense. When my sister went out there, she realized that she wasn't, the church wasn't for her. And I think used that like confusion and anger and took it out towards my family. And again, this is from my point of view. Obviously, like I can only speak from my side of things because I was the one who was seeing things from a different perspective. But she was posting stuff on Facebook, kind of bashing Christianity, and in turn bashing my parents because of the things that were said in the posts. And it took a toll on my parents. It took a pretty big toll on my parents, and me being closer to them, being in the East Coast, um, I had to deal with that. I had to deal with them and their sadness and their confusion on why she was acting this way, and it's I think it's a part of life. Like people are going to change, and people might in the confusion and in the change freak out because they feel like they've lost time or they've lost piece of their life to something, and it's understandable that people might have their reaction, but every action that you take in life And I know I've made plenty of in myself have consequences for people. Consequences that sometimes are inexcusable, you know? Sometimes your actions when you do affect other people and they can be good or bad. Sometimes when you make a decision, I'm walking down the street and I pick up a $20 that I found on the ground. Oh my god, this is $20. Woo! I got $20. I could take this money and I could I could go home. But someone could have dropped that $20 and it was their $20 to get home on the bus. And I took it. So they came back trying to find the $20. They couldn't find it. They had to walk the 5 miles home. But I could in turn find the $20 and go somewhere and that's nearby and be like, hey, is anyone looking for $20? And find the person, and that person can then go home. You know? And that's just an example, but our actions have consequences, and I know I have dealt with some. I know I've in the past, and I've talked about this on past podcasts. Is like me and myself. I when I was in high school, I didn't know who I was. I did not know who I was. I made really, really poor choices, bad judgment calls all the way around. Just like I was running my life on ego and running my life on the conception that if I wanted something, I could manipulate to get there. I can manipulate to do what I want. And that's a fucked up mindset, you know? It's a really fucked up mindset. But when you're a kid, you're not correlating things correctly, and it doesn't excuse some of the things that I've done, and it doesn't excuse what some other people have done, and they have to deal with the consequences. But as you grow up and you get older, you change. You know, I know that there's people that I've hurt that I'll never be forgiven for, and I'm not looking for forgiveness because I know that I don't deserve it, nor do I deserve to be in that person's life anymore. Just like I know that there's some people who have hurt me in specific ways that I will never be able to forgive, nor do they deserve for me to forgive them or for them to forgive me. You know, it's back and forth. Doesn't mean that the world is over. It doesn't mean that things are over, but you have to learn from those things and move on and grow as a human being. That's how we've done it as a country. That's how we've done it for other groups. Like when things don't work and things you fuck up, you fix it and you move on. You know, you think of scientists, how many times they've tried to perfect something and they've gone through so much resources and they keep burning or destroying something in the process, and they have to keep spending money to do it. All right, we fucked that up. You think of like spaceships. How many times? Think of all the times that a spaceship's been launched and there's one thing wrong, and sometimes it's something that you can't handle, but like some things it's just a fuck up mechanically, and it blows up. That's so much money gone. You know, you think about that. So much money that they spend every single time they have a fuck up, but they get back on their horse, they fix it, and they move forward. You know, I think it's a lesson to be learned. But I just got off track with that. The way that my sister handled her anger was unjustified, and her confusion. And I think that's the best way I can do is the confusion, because it might be a realization for her that she doesn't want to be a part of Christianity anymore, and that's fine. I'm not a part of it. But I shouldn't have taken out that anger or that confusion or that realization out on my parents and other people. And it wasn't the fact that, you know what? I'm contradicting myself. I told you guys, I don't edit this. I'm going to say it. I'm contradicting myself because I have no idea how her relationship was with my parents. At the end of the day, I have no idea. This is from an outside perspective. Okay? An outside perspective, one-sided. I have no idea how the relationship was. So I can't say it was unjustified. What I can say is how she handled my relationship with her. That was unjustified. So forgive me. My parents are wonderful people. Were they perfect? No. Was I perfect? No. Was my sister perfect? No. No one's perfect. Okay? My parents have definitely come a long way from when I was younger. 100%. But they watch me, they support me, they love me, and I know that they're there for me. Whenever I need someone to fall back on and just talk to, they're there. And I'm really happy that I can have that relationship with my family because I know a lot of people don't have that as an option. However, the way my sister handled the situation with my parents was she wanted to cease contact altogether. That's fine. I understand that. I totally understand ceasing contact with anybody. Anybody. I've done it plenty of times. Sometimes when you have negativity in your life, the best thing to do is just cut out that cancer that's in your life. You know, cut out that part that it's not doing anything good for you and get rid of it. You know, that's the best part. But here's my thing. It's a human being. It's not a cancer. So no matter who it is, if they're a big part of your life and they've been a big part of your life for a while, there needs to be some sort of communication. There has to be. There's got to be at least some reason. Otherwise, the person will be left wondering and will not be able to cope. Especially people who aren't as, I don't want to say like culturally aware, but you know, like when us millennials, us Gen Z, like people who are having these untraditional mindsets and outlooks on life. A lot of the people who are older than us don't have those outlooks. Not that they're not capable of that, but they're not used to it. So if we're having these realizations now that they've most likely will grow accustomed to, you have to understand that they're not going to understand right away. You have to like talk to them. Just like talking to someone who doesn't understand how to do something. You have to explain it to them, otherwise they won't understand. And so for my sister to leave like that, my parents didn't understand and they didn't get it. And they didn't understand why she would say all of these rude things without any explanation to them because she never talked to them. She just said, I don't want to talk to you guys anymore and cut communication. They have not talked to her in years. And I remember right before I got married, I'd already moved in with Joy, and I was living with her, and we had a place that we were gonna get, and then we were gonna get married in like a month or so. I had a call from my sister, and this was like when things were like they weren't really talking or anything, but I had no ill will. I was just kind of confused. She had called me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, Josh, I just want to apologize for like all of the stupid stuff I did as a kid, and I really want to grow our relationship and bond again because I miss you as a sibling." And that was huge for me. I was taken aback. I was moved, and I really wanted to be closer with my sister because you know, like when we were kids, she was an older sibling, and like I said, I was annoying. We had a lot of differences, especially because I did theater and I was just kind of like the wild child, and she was very, very like the goody two shoes ones of our family, and I think that's one of the reasons why she's so upset. Is, you know, like I was the annoying one. I was the one who was getting into trouble, and so she'd done some fucked up things to me as a kid. You know, like putting my toothbrush in the fucking toilet and shit, and blaming me for things that I didn't do, but she did. And so, and I did the same to her. And it was just, you know, it's like childhood warfare. You know, it's just kind of one of those things that you do as siblings. And it was just really nice for her to like apologize, and I apologized, and we were just like, I was really looking forward to catching up, and I didn't hear from her again. And I had sent out invitations to my wedding, and my mom messaged me and said that she had heard from my sister's husband that they weren't coming. And this is granted, I'm telling, this was the day before we got married. They told us they weren't coming, and they said they were prior to that. And I know things change, but they never messaged me about it. My sister never sent me a message saying, "Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, I can't make it." And I wanted to wait, and so I waited until the day after my wedding, and she never messaged me. She never said, "Hey, congratulations on your wedding. Hey, I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm sorry that we waited the last minute." Nothing. No words. And this was after she had not non contact with my parents and been saying all that stuff and doing all that. And I was like, no, this is not something that I need in my life, because you obviously don't care about me, and I wanted you here. You're my sister. This is my special day. I was there for your wedding, and I wanted you here for mine. And if you couldn't have been here for some reason, I would understand. But you never even congratulated me. And with that was the final straw for me, because not only was I having to deal with my parents and their confusion, and then them being upset with her not being around and not being in their lives anymore. It's their little girl, you know. But I didn't get to have my sister at my wedding. I didn't get to have my big sister, and that sucked. That sucked. It really, really sucked. And I messaged her and I said, "Hey, listen, I don't know what the fuck you have going on in your life right now. I understand you're going through some changes, but the way you're treating our parents and the way you've treated me in turn is not okay, and I cannot forgive that. And I know that in the future, if things change and stuff, and once the tension dies down, and obviously I'm happy she's finding herself. Maybe one day we can reconnect, but there's always going to be part of me that wants to reconnect with my sister. Always. She's my sister and I love her. But then there's also the part of me that can't excuse how she handled the situation. It can't. And I know that's the case for a lot of things that I've done in my past. So I understand. And I'm not saying it's justified, and I'm not saying it's the correct thing, but your emotions are your emotions. I'm never going to judge anyone at all, on how they handle a situation where they're hurt. And that's why I'm saying I contradicted myself earlier. Because I can see how my sister, in a lapse of the YouTube quote, in a lapse of judgment, could handle a situation wrong, or handle something out of anger, or, you know, like frustration. I can see how that could happen. Doesn't justify it. Doesn't make it okay. Not saying it's okay in the slightest, but I can understand why someone would do it. You know? And I had this conversation with Joy not too long ago, was that I can understand why people would do certain things. Doesn't make it okay, but I can understand why someone would think this way. And this is a really, 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 really rash reasoning and correlation to how I'm trying to put this. But murderers, normally, the why their brain derives from that is some sort of trauma from their past. People do things because of certain things. Trauma and certain things will trigger things in people's minds that will normally have reason behind. It's not explainable. It doesn't make sense, nor is it justified. But normally there's something that triggers things in people that make them do what they do. That goes for other people too, and other people with what medical terms would call issues, you know, or diagnoses or things like that. People normally, those derive from something. You know, some things are totally genetic, 100%. Some things are totally genetic, like if you think of like neurodivergent, like the ADHD, autism, those types of things. Those are, you know, those are genetic. You know, but certain things are focused by, or are brought on by trauma. And those things interest me because I like listening and hearing about how certain things and how certain people act. But no, this, with this decision and my decision and other people's decisions, I can understand why people would act that way. I think the perfect representation of what I'm trying to put is Will Smith. It's huge right now. The slap that was heard around the world. The bonus episode that I put on my Patreon, I gave my opinions on that, and I won't go into it now because that's for the bonus episode. But I can understand his frustration and his reasoning behind what he did. Does it make it okay? In my opinion, no. Okay? I can understand why. I'm not justifying it or saying it's okay. But I can understand his reasoning. A lot of people can understand. Doesn't make it the right choice in that moment. Doesn't make it the good thing to do. You can understand. And I know that my sister is finding herself, and I'm happy that she's taken the time that she needs to be away and find herself. And I can understand her reasoning and of how she handled this situation. But she hurt a lot of people in the process, a lot, including myself, obviously. And burned some bridges that probably will never be able to be fixed. But who knows? Who knows? I think it's important for any situation. Doesn't have to be family. It could be friends, and it doesn't have to be lack of communication. It could be other things as well. Any kind of situation. It's some things, and this is what we got to with the Connections podcast, which I love. The question is, if you could ask someone, anyone, alive or dead, one question, what would it be? What would it be? And there's a couple people that came to my mind when I was asked that question, and my response was, why? That was my question. That was my answer, is why? Because you'll never know. Some things you'll never understand, and some things will never be able to be explained. They're just gonna linger there, and they're gonna just taunt you in your brain. Because at the end of the day, you have no idea why people will do things. And you can try to understand, and I can understand in some cases, but why did they go and do that? Why did they make that rational decision? Why, like, yes, there you in a spur of the moment anger, you can understand them doing something, but like what was the turning point for them? What made them do that, and why did they choose that? It's just interesting. And it's been on my mind a lot recently because, you know, Joy and I are coming up on our wedding anniversary, and it's prevalent in my mind. And talk of family has been in the air for a while, especially from my family and her family, just being like, "Hey, when are you guys having kids?" I'm just thinking about family, and my kids won't have an aunt. You know, not on my side of the family. They'll have one on Joy's, but I won't have a niece or a nephew, as far as I know, one that's in my life besides on Joy's side, but that's through law. It's not through blood. It's just interesting to think about, and it made me feel a little shitty. It made me feel a little sad, but that's life, and I think the best thing to do in these situations is just talk about it. And I want this podcast to be a journal for myself and be fun and laughy daffy. But sometimes you're just going to have a shit week. And sometimes you're just going to have a shit mindset. And that's okay. It's okay to not be okay. The words of Shaking Tugboat. I've heard that from other people, but that's the prevalent person that comes to mind is it's okay to not be okay. Today on stream, I halfway through, even though it was a good morning, halfway through the stream, I just had a shift in mindset. My brain totally went to a different place, and I don't know what caused it. I don't know what triggered it, but I was just in a really bad mental space for the rest of the stream. Ended a little early, went and took the dog for a long walk, sat outside in the sun, stretched my legs, had some nice lunch, and then came and sat down and started recording the podcast. It's going to happen. And it always happens on the T days, Tuesdays and Thursdays. What the fuck is up with those days, guys? Tuesdays and Thursdays are always days that normally just mentally drain me. What the fuck? What the hell? I don't understand it. But it's okay not to have a good day or a week or whatnot. And it's okay. It's okay to be upset about things. And it's okay. It's okay to be emotional about things. You know, at the end of the day, if you're having an issue with someone, you know, if you're having an issue with someone, your feelings are valid on all fronts. Everyone's feelings are valid. Doesn't make you in the right at whatever you're doing, you know? But you're allowed to feel the way you feel. And it's okay to not be okay. I know this was a bit of a more serious topic of conversation. And I hope that you got some insight from it and at least enjoyed the conversation for what it was. It's just I thought it would be really good to just be open about it and talk about it. It's opening up a little bit of my personal side of my life, which I was debating on talking about because obviously it's private, but also not really because it's on Facebook and stuff. I know a lot of the Twitch people don't know that, but I know that some people who aren't on Twitch will listen to the podcast and, you know, it's already out there. I might as well just talk about it. Do you know what I'm saying? That's how I feel about things. Because if at the end of the day, if anybody looks, they're going to find stuff and they'll be like, what are these? And they'll have just questions. Doesn't mean I have to give them that information, but it's a part of my life. It's in my mind. So why not talk about it? You know, why not? I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, it's too private. You can't talk about that because it's too private. What's too private? It's my life. You know, some things that I'm not going to share because it's completely private for me, you know, but that's my choice. I have the right to talk about what I want to talk about. You know, that's the one thing that I'm happy about is having the platform that I can do that with, you know, is just, if I want to talk about something, I'll talk about something, you know, if I want to talk about something, I'll talk about something. It's my right. It's my right. Anyway, bit of a shorter episode, a little update announcements here at the end. I know I normally do at the beginning. I was just in the mindset, so I wanted to just keep going and talk about it. Platinum update. Let's do a little flip platinum update. We're at 188 platinums. 188. We need 12 more. I'm gonna get that done by probably 2 weeks from now. I'm almost positive. I'm just gonna grind out. I'm probably gonna get it. Right now, Fall Guys is going to be closing on May 9th, so I have to get the platinum before the 9th. I don't know if I'm actually going to make it. I've been grinding away, trying my hardest, but I have no idea if it's actually going to happen or not. We'll see. As for stream, we have a lot of things changing. I came out with a community survey this past weekend. Having the community look over it. I'm changing some things in the Discord, changing some things on stream, adding stuff a lot, trying to make it more interactive for everybody, hearing their viewpoints on what they'd like to see, because obviously they're the ones watching and I want to make sure that they're happy with what they're getting. So it's just a little survey for everybody. And I'm getting really good feedback with that, which has been awesome. Life outside has been good. Obviously dealing with some mental headspace stuff, but what's new? What's fucking new? But yeah, things have been good. Otherwise, the dog is good. He's over here yawning, stretching at me like, oh, that was a good walk. But yeah, things are looking up. And it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. Just got to keep repeating that to yourself, you know? Got to keep repeating that to yourself. It's okay to not be okay. I want to leave the podcast with a little closer. I think it'd be good to close it off with something. Because the announcements were a little abrupt. So we'll tone it down again a little bit. I know that everyone's dealing with their own stuff personally. Like every day, someone's going through something. It might just be you got allergies right now. Your car might need to be getting fixed, but you don't have the money for it. You're running out of food. Work's been a little stressful. I know a lot of people are going back to the office as of late, which is the first time in a long time for a lot of people because of COVID. And I think with COVID, a lot of people have gotten accustomed to, staying at home and getting used to working from home. And not a lot of people have had to deal with people head on for a while. So it's a big change, and a lot of anxiety is coming with that. But everyone's got stuff going on every day, and I know that. And so what I will say is whatever you're going through right now, doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. I don't need to know. Don't message me. I don't want trauma dumped at all. But whatever you got going on, just know that like other people are going through similar things. It might not to be the extent of what you're dealing with, but we're all trying to make it, all of us. And sometimes the best thing to do in situations that you're just feeling like absolutely defeated or just confused about a situation, or you're just dealing with something that absolutely feels like trash, is just reaching out to someone close to you, someone who you can talk to, and ask them, hey, you got a moment to talk? Obviously, if you're having thoughts of any extreme things, there are numbers for you to call, and I'm actually going to list one in the description that you can use if you want. But I think it's important to talk about, and like if you need someone, if you just need a vent, sometimes venting is the biggest cure. Talk to a friend who is going to have your back. And if they think it's serious, they will provide the number. But if you think it's serious and you're scared to talk to someone, it's anonymous. Call the number. It's anonymous. To be completely transparent, I've used that number before. Twice, actually. I've used that number before twice. Where one was because of a relationship, and one was because of the juice bar. There's been a couple times in my life where I feel like I put all of my effort into something, and there's nothing that comes to fruition with it. And because of how my mindset is, it eats away at me, because I feel like no matter how hard I work, nothing will ever be good enough. And through conversations with others, personal growth, and mental growth for myself, I've overcome that. Obviously, there are bad days. Talked about them before on the podcast. It's just growing, and it's hard to pick up the phone and call, but sometimes it's needed. And I think the biggest part for me is I didn't want to be a burden to anybody in my family, anybody in my friend group. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to drop my problems on other people. And that's what's glorious about, it's so important about the number, is it's anonymous. They don't have to know who you are. You can just talk. And if you need help and they think you need help, they can get you the help that you need without having to worry about anything. And I think it's important. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. Everyone's dealing with stuff. Yeah. I think it was an important thing to talk about today. I wanted to express my feelings for my sister. I wanted to get that and just speak it, for my own health. But I also just wanted to talk about just mental spaces, because it's something that people talk about all the time, but I think a lot of people talk about it for personal gain, and I think it's really shitty. but that's a whole other topic. That's a whole other topic. But thank you all for listening. Just know that the number down below in the description, anyone can call at any time. If you're just looking to vent, find a friend, and talk to them. And again, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Much love, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic week. And remember to stay positive and optimistic. There's always a bunch of shit that hits the fan right before. What was the term I say? There's always shit before the poopery. There's always shit before the poopery. It's not the best metaphor, but it was one that came to my brain a while ago. Well, there's a bunch of shit before the poopery. You always feel better after a bunch of shit. Poopery comes, you're like, oh, that smells nice, and you feel weightless, and you're like, wow, that was a good shit. That was a good shit. A lot of shit happens, a lot of stupid stuff that hits your life, and then you're fine, and then something good happens, But anyway, eat your apples, everybody, and stay funky, my dudes. I'll see you next week. Bye.